My name is Amelia, and for a long time I believed two things: that hard work always pays off, and that love, if you protect it, protects you back. I was wrong about both, but not forever. I met Ethan when I was 24 and convinced I wasn't the kind of woman people noticed. He saw me anyway. He had a way of listening that made you feel like you were unwrapping a present, ribbon by ribbon. He'd tilt his head, ask one careful question, and in that moment, I'd forget every reason I had to be guarded. We were married 2 years later in a little brick church with a stubborn bell that rang off key. My mother cried through the whole ceremony. Ethan's father kept giving him the same proud, nervous nod as if to say, "Go on, son. You can do this." I brought that kind of faith with me to the office, too. I worked in brand strategy at a mid-sized agency called North Harbor. Not glamorous, not tiny, that strange middle where you do a little bit of everything and learn fast because there's nowhere to hide. We had a corner kitchen with a plant nobody watered and meeting rooms with names like the Lighthouse and the Dock. The lighthouse had a window that framed the city like a postcard. On foggy mornings, the top of the cathedral disappeared and left the sky looking unfinished. The first day I met Rhea was the first day the cathedral vanished behind the fog. She walked into the lighthouse balancing 2 coffees and a laptop, red lipstick perfectly drawn, and said, "You must be Amelia. I stole the good chair for you." She smiled like we were already friends. She had that rare gift of making chaos look intentional. Even the way she dropped her bag, the way her bracelets sang, felt like choreography. She was bold without being brash, charming without trying. Within a week, people were saying our names together, Amelia and Rhea, as if the hyphen had always been there. We were the pair that filled whiteboards like we were writing a love letter to possibility. She would throw paint, I would shape edges. She was the spark, I was the quiet oxygen. She'd say, "Trust me, this color will make them sigh." And I'd say, "This positioning will make them sign." We began to win pitches we weren't supposed to win. Clients remembered us, the partners noticed. Our boss, Martin, started calling on us first, his tie loosened, his voice bright. "Let's hear from the dream team." At home, Ethan called us that too. "How's the dream team?" he'd ask when I came back late, dropping my heels by the door like small, defeated horses. I'd tell him about Rhea's brilliant headline, about the time she ripped a page from a magazine and said, This is the feeling." And I turned it into a whole campaign skeleton overnight. He'd grin, pour me tea, and say, "I love your brain, Mills." He was the first person to give my ambition the sound of a blessing. It is a dangerous thing to feel that safe. It started with favors. Rhea needed to run home for a delivery. Could I finish a deck? Of course. She'd stay last week when I had a dentist appointment. Then she needed me to export files because her laptop was acting up. Then she needed my login because IT was slow. Then she needed me to jump on a call and pretend to be her because she was stuck across town. She was always so grateful, always promising to switch back the minute things calmed down, and they never did. The first rumor brushed past me like a stranger's coat, nothing to hold on to. Someone said Rhea and Martin had a kind of gravity. Too much eye contact, too many closed-door meetings. I laughed, waved my hand, said, "She's magnetic with everyone." In my head I added, "And I know her. I know her." We're so certain of the people we choose that we forget people are still choosing who to be. The second rumor wasn't a rumor. It was a calendar notification I wasn't supposed to see. It pinged because Rhea had used my login again to book a room. Lighthouse, 11 a.m., deck walk through with E. E could have been anyone. But the note said, "Bring the ring." I stared at it longer than I should have. replayed every conversation with Ethan about his friend Eric's proposal, about the ring design he was keeping secret, about how bad he was at secrets. I told myself E was Eric and let the lie lie. When you see the first crack and decide the wall is fine, you start speaking fluent denial. The night I realized I couldn't translate anymore was a Tuesday. I came home early to surprise Ethan because Rhea had left me a voice note saying, "Go, go, I'll close the loop on the vendor. I've got you." It was the kind of kindness that feels like a hand on your back. The push you don't know you needed. I stopped at the bakery for the lemon tarts he loved. The house was quiet when I unlocked the door. No music, no television, just that gentle hum of a place that thinks no one is listening. And I heard a laugh. I had never heard Ethan laugh that way. Quick, breathless, guilty at the edges. It came from the hallway, the one with the pictures from our wedding and one crooked frame we never fixed. I took 3 steps and saw her first, Rhea. Barefoot, hair down, my sweater on. My sweater. She turned, eyes wide, and then he was there behind her, saying my name like it was a question you could answer with enough context. There are moments that stretch into forever without asking permission. I saw everything in the space between one heartbeat and the next. The lipstick stain on his collar, not hers. A color she didn't wear. The ring box open on the table, empty as if history had been rewritten and needed somewhere to hide. The 2 coffee cups on the counter, one of them mine, the mug I always chose because the handle was smooth. It occurred to me that betrayal is domestic before it's dramatic. It learns your cupboards. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the tarts. I set them down carefully, as if the box had a pulse I didn't want to harm. I don't know why I said what I said next. Maybe because I'm the sort of person who organizes pain neatly, so it doesn't spill. "I need you both to get dressed," I said, "and then I need you to sit down." Ethan reached for me, reflex, and I stepped back. Rhea started to explain, the way people do when they're not sorry. Just scared. I lifted a hand and the room obediently quieted. "I'm not going to ask why," I said, and felt something slide into place inside me, a gear finally catching. I am going to ask for honesty. From this moment on. Ethan swore it was new. Rhea swore it was rare. I stared at the ring box and thought, how many times can love be misplaced before it becomes lost? I asked them to sleep elsewhere that night. Rhea left quickly, voice breaking, like the kind of actress who knows the camera is close. Ethan stayed on the sofa a long time, his hands covering his face as if darkness could teach him a better answer. In the morning, I pressed my palms to the bathroom counter and practiced saying my name. It sounded strange in my mouth, like I had borrowed it from someone braver. Then I went to work. There is a way the world moves around you when it thinks you are fine. People asked me for timelines, for fonts, for 2 quick edits. Martin wanted a rehearsal for the biggest pitch we'd ever had, a national outdoor brand, 7 figures, the kind of client that becomes a paragraph on your resume that lights up everything else. He wanted Rhea to present. He wanted me to support because my demeanor was so steady. I heard the word steady and thought of the lemon tarts, the careful way I had set them down, the split second where I had decided not to break anything because some part of me still believed I could fix it. That night, Ethan didn't come home. He left a voicemail that said he needed time, as if time were a hotel room he could book under another name. I kept imagining him in the kitchen, rinsing 2 coffee cups, wiping the counter with the blue cloth we bought on vacation. I lay awake and cataloged the small violences of ordinary life. The way you have to keep breathing. The way you have to meet a deadline. The way the sun rises regardless. The next day, I found the second, undeniable evidence. It was not lipstick or laughter. It was an email, my email, forwarded by accident to me. Rhea had been using my login again, and in her haste, she sent the file to my address. Subject line: E. Our deck. Attachment: the final pitch we had built together, with 2 slides I had written alone at 2 a.m., slides she had replaced with a new version that softened my voice, rounded my edges, placed her name prominently under ideas I had carried like a fever. In the email, the opening line was the weapon. I can sell this, but I need you in the front row. E did not mean Ethan. It meant Eric, the prospective client's head of marketing. I remembered the calendar note. E, bring the ring. The friend's proposal hadn't happened. The ring had been here in my house, useless. I stared at the email and felt something that wasn't anger yet. It was colder, cleaner, a kind of stillness you only find in storms. I wish I could tell you I marched into HR. I wish I could tell you I blew everything up at once. I didn't. I did what I always do. I made a plan. Revenge isn't fire. It's a spreadsheet. It's a calendar. It's knowing the difference between noise and proof. First, I changed my passwords. Then I went to IT and asked, politely, apologetically, whether there had been any unusual logins on my account. The tech, a kind man with a stickered water bottle and shy eyes, printed a sheet he wasn't supposed to print. You should update your recovery phone too, he said, almost whispering, and slid the paper across the desk without looking at me. 3 late-night logins from Rhea's machine, 2 downloads of our shared folder, 1 external copy to a drive I didn't recognize. Next, I opened the project archive and pulled the original versions of the slides, the timestamps, the comments showing my authorship. I exported a version control log. Every change, every timestamp, every trackable breath. I was not going to argue. I was going to demonstrate. Finally, I wrote an email to Martin requesting that I present the strategy section of the pitch for clarity and continuity. I wrote it with the kind of professional calm that makes men who are used to getting their way nod, convinced the idea was theirs. He replied in 6 minutes. Of course. He CC'd Rhea. She replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a line that made me smile without humor. Teamwork. The night before the pitch, Ethan texted me. Can we talk? I stared at the screen until the typing dots disappeared. Then I wrote, after Thursday. He sent back, I love you. I didn't reply. There are silences that do more work than words can manage. Thursday came dressed like a new city. I woke before the alarm, washed my hair, ironed the blouse I wore the day we won our first impossible client. When I reached the office, the lighthouse was already buzzing. The client team had arrived early. Eric with his no-nonsense glasses, his assistant, 2 brand managers who looked too young to be that tired. Martin shook hands, Rhea arranged pastries, I tested the clicker twice and taped a small note inside my palm that said simply, breathe. Rhea opened, she always opened, warmed the room with that effortless candor, then handed to me like a magician inviting the mark onto the stage. I took a step forward, saw the city frame behind Eric's shoulder, and did something I had never done in a presentation. I told the truth. Not about the affair. Not about the ring. About the work. I want to show you the spine of this, I said. The part that holds if it's windy. I clicked to a slide with the earliest sketch. The one from a Tuesday, 2 months ago, when I could still say the word we and mean it. We began here. We tested 12 directions. We killed 3 ideas I loved. We kept 2 I didn't trust until I saw them in the wild. We fought for this tone because it isn't fashionable right now, which is exactly why it will feel like oxygen. Eric leaned forward. Who wrote that line? He asked, tapping the headline Rhea had moved to her section. A small question, an ordinary question. My heart did not race. It waited. I did, I said, on March 4th at 2:13 a.m. in the comments. We can show the version history if you'd like context to silence you could pour tea into. Rhea's smile faltered. Martin cleared his throat too loudly. Eric glanced at his team, then back at me. Please, he said. I clicked. The log appeared. Dates, times, names. The evidence was a choir that didn't need a conductor. I did not look at Rhea. I did not look at Martin. I scrolled slowly, steadily, until the story told itself. When it ended, Eric sat back and exhaled. He wasn't angry. He was something worse for agencies. He was unimpressed. He asked Martin whether our processes always required this much cleaning up. Martin stumbled. Rhea said something about collaboration. It sounded like a sweater snagging on a nail. I returned to the work. I showed the plan, the testing, the 3 paths forward with their risks labeled without euphemism. I didn't sell, I explained. I didn't charm, I taught. We won the pitch anyway. Or rather, the work did. Eric shook my hand and said, I like the way your brain keeps receipts. He did not shake Rhea's. She left early, claiming a migraine. I returned to my desk and waited for the part where everything breaks. It didn't take long. Martin called me into his office, closed the door, and said, the sentence, men like him use when they feel cornered. You could have handled that privately. I said I had, for 2 months. Then I asked for a salary adjustment commensurate with lead authorship and for formal recognition of my role on the pitch. He said he would consider it. I said I would send HR the version log and the printed access report from IT with the after-hours logins. He said he didn't realize there was a situation. I said there wouldn't be one if we aligned on credit. He said, you're very calm. I said, I'm very done. On Friday, HR scheduled interviews about process integrity. On Monday, Rhea was asked to take a paid leave while they reviewed the digital records. On Tuesday, Martin emailed the team to say I would be acting lead on the account transition. On Wednesday, Ethan came by the house to pick up a suit he'd left, and we stood in the doorway like actors at the end of a play that hasn't earned its applause. He cried, I didn't. I had done all my crying in the space between a laugh I couldn't unhear and a calendar note I couldn't unknow. He said he'd made a terrible mistake. He said he didn't know what came over him, as if betrayal were a weather pattern you couldn't predict. I asked him whether he wanted the blue cloth from the kitchen, the one we bought on vacation. He stared, confused, then shook his head. He asked whether there was a way back. I said there was always a way forward. Sometimes it just didn't lead to the same place. We filed for separation a week later. I did not ask for the ring. I didn't want jewelry that remembered me wrong. HR concluded their review with words that were precise and thin at the same time. Policy deviation, improper access, misattribution. Rhea was offered a choice: probation with reduced responsibilities and a performance plan, or resignation with a neutral reference. She chose the second. She sent me a text that combined apology with accusation because it is hard to grieve the loss of power without blaming the person who took away the easy version of yourself. I didn't reply. There are echoes that deserve to fade. I thought that would be the end. It wasn't. Karma, when she takes her time, likes her details. 6 months later, I heard that Rhea had joined a startup that promised the moon with a ladder that didn't even reach the fence. One of their investors, a woman named Layla with a gaze like a surgeon, called me for a reference. I told her exactly what I tell you now, without spite and without embroidery. Rhea is brilliant at ignition and careless with credit. She will light your sky. She will also forget who brought the matches. Layla thanked me. 2 months after that, the startup downsized and Rhea's title went from director to contractor. I didn't celebrate. There is relief and then there is gloating, and only one of them lets you sleep. As for me, the work changed shape. I stayed at North Harbor long enough to stabilize the account and build a small team of the sort of people who make generosity look like good business strategy. Then I left. I started a boutique practice with 2 clients who told me the truth and one who tried not to, and learned quickly that I listen for a living. I kept my email simple, my music quiet, my plants alive. On rainy days, I let the kettle run long enough to fill the kitchen with a soft, hopeful fog. Ethan married the woman he dated after me, then divorced her, then moved to a city where nobody knew he had once been the kind of man who kept 2 coffee cups on a counter and called it confusion. Rhea popped up from time to time online, launching something speaking, wearing success like a dress that had to be returned by noon. I surprised myself by wishing her well every time, not because I had forgotten, but because I didn't want her shadow leaning against my doorframe forever. The last time I saw her was not on a screen. It was at a wedding, not hers. Layla's daughter, actually, a bright, fierce young woman who had interned with me and taught me to drink espresso without sugar. The ceremony was at a greenhouse with a glass roof and chandeliers that pretended to be constellations. I was finding my seat when I heard my name, careful as if it belonged to porcelain. Amelia? I turned. Rhea stood 2 rows behind me, hands wrapped around a program, hair a little shorter, lipstick softer. She looked like someone who had learned to knock before entering. "Hi," I said, and meant it. We stood in that small, polite silence people use to measure whether a bridge is still there. She spoke first. "I'm sorry," she said. "Not the excuse kind. The real kind." I waited. "I am not going to explain," she added. "I did the kind of thing you do when you don't want to admit to yourself that you're hungry for things that don't belong to you. I hurt you at home. I hurt you at work. You were kind to me when you could have been cruel." She laughed once without joy. "And you were precise." I thought of the lighthouse, of the version logs, of the way my voice did not shake when I said, "I did." I thought of lemon tarts. I thought of the blue cloth. I thought of the way I have learned to keep the pieces of myself I cannot replace in a room only I can unlock. "I don't need anything," I said. "Not an apology, not an explanation. But I appreciate the first and I'm relieved by the second." She nodded. "Are you happy?" she asked. And for a heartbeat, I saw the woman who had carried coffees, as if they were promises. "Yes," I said, in a way that didn't look like happiness to me before. The ceremony began. The chandeliers did their small, bright pretending. The vows made the room hold its breath. When the music swelled and people stood to clap, I felt something loosen in my chest, like a ribbon finally sliding free. I looked at Rhea and realized I did not want to walk her out of my life with a sentence. I wanted to walk myself into my own with a door I closed gently behind me. On the way out, Layla squeezed my hand and whispered, "Thank you for the kind reference years ago." I smiled. She arched an eyebrow and added, "Kind and accurate." Some people think revenge is a spectacular crash at the end of a long, reckless race. I don't. I think it's a set of choices that let you arrive at your own front door and recognize the person who opens it. Sometimes I tell the story differently in my head, the way you edit a memory to try on alternate endings. In one version, I stop the affair the first day. In another, I quit immediately and start my firm without the ache. In another, I scream until the house shakes, and the lemon tarts are sugar dust on the floor. But the truth is, the version that happened is the only one that taught me what I actually needed to learn. That boundaries are not walls. They are maps that credit is not vanity, it is oxygen, that love does not become truer when you make yourself smaller to fit inside it. People ask me if I forgave them. The answer is yes, but not in the way they mean. I forgave them by living a life they could not edit. I forgave them by turning the volume down on their echoes until they became part of the room tone, present, but not in charge. I forgave them by keeping the receipts, not to wave in anyone's face, but to remind myself, when fog drifts in and the cathedral disappears, that the city is still there. Every so often, the agency invites me back to speak to the new hires about process and ownership. I stand in the lighthouse and look out at a skyline that learned to finish itself. I tell them the story of a deck that almost lied. I tell them to put their names on the things they make. I tell them to be generous with ideas and ruthless with credit, because both are love languages. And as they pack their laptops and I gather my notes, someone always asks the question they are trying not to ask. But what about when someone takes what's yours? I say, then you do the 3 quietest and hardest things. You document. I decide. You move. I do not tell them about lemon tarts or blue cloths. I do not tell them about a ring that sat open on a table like a small, stunned animal. I save those details for nights when I make tea and the kettle fogs the windows, and I think, with a kind of astonished gratitude, I am not the person who stood in that hallway anymore. I am the person who chose what came after. If you are listening to this and holding your own small evidence against your heart like it might explode, hear me. You are not powerless because you are quiet. You are not foolish because you trusted. You are not fragile because you broke. You are a map only you can read. You are a city that looks unfinished in the fog and perfectly whole when the light changes. You are allowed to tell the truth calmly and let the room be the one that shakes. This is not a story about a woman who destroyed the people who hurt her. It is a story about a woman who refused to let the tiny wine met in her fur. I did not set a fire, I set a boundary, and when the smoke cleared, there I was, recognizable, steady, alive. Thank you for listening to my story. This is Revenge Echo, where karma always speaks back. Subscribe for more stories of betrayal, truth, and quiet victories. And if you needed a sign that you can start over, consider this my permission slip.